In the previous tutorial video, we have modified our model classes and also the command classes such that when we rerun as regression testing, when we rerun our acceptance test over here, new followed by deposit, and this is what we got. Let's just review what we have done. So if I rerun this acceptance test at01.txt, and this is our output, you can see these are the execution of the user initiated events, and surrounding them are the initial states for the model, the bank, and also this is the states of the model after executing the first events, and this is the state of the model after executing the second events of the model, and so on. So that's what we have got. So now we do have reasonable states for the external outputs. Of course, as an exercise, you should really try to complete the withdraw and transfer features for the user requests. So withdraw and transfer, make sure you complete them before you do your own application. Okay, so now what I would like to do for us will be, let's review what we have done for the model side. Okay, and we want to see if we really have followed through the design by contract principles that we have learned so much so far. Okay, so what I will do is I'll go back to our model classes. Okay, let's go to the bank class, for example. We want to make sure, for example, the new feature that we created, does it really have the proper precondition, for example. For the post condition, you can definitely do it by yourself. I'll just talk about precondition in this case. So now we say that we want to add a new ID into the list of accounts. So the question is, have we missed any preconditions here? What if the user wants to actually create, for example, over here, let's say ID1, which is okay, but they say ID1 again, in which case they should be violating the precondition for the bank. Hopefully you agree over here, right? So the new feature over here. So now we're talking about the model. So the model, which is different from the user interface. So the model side, we really have to follow through the design by contracts principles. We make sure every feature has to have some clear obligation and benefits for the client and supplier, the caller and callees. So now for the new feature on the model side, we must make sure it has the proper precondition. For example, here's one. We want to make sure the ID does not exist just yet. So the ID, non-existing ID. Okay, so we can use the across notation. So we're going to say across. So now we're going to say it is not the case. Okay, so here you got two ways to write it. You can either use some for existential quantification, or you can use all for universal quantification. Okay, let me just show you the existential quantification. You can say across all the accounts as cursor. I can say cursor.item.id is equal to the ID. I want to say it is not the case, right? There doesn't exist an account that has the same ID as the ID that we're trying to add in. Okay, if it does exist, that means you're violating the precondition. Okay, let's make the indentation a little bit better. Okay, so that's a precondition we like to enforce for this particular feature. Let's make sure it compiles. Of course, it will be your exercise to rewrite this into using a universal quantification. Okay, I'll leave that to you. Okay, let's compile over here. Okay, to test this, what we should do is we should really, rather than just modifying this AT01, because this AT01 represents one particular scenario that we wanted to test, right? Creating two distinct accounts and then try to deposit into one particular account. That test is pretty good. So we don't want to really change this. What we should do is we should create a new one. Okay, what I will do is I'll simply go to our test folder over here, because currently we only got at01.txt. So now let me just create another one. So at02.txt. Okay. So what I can do is open at02.txt. Okay, what I can say is create a new account, and then I can say new ID1. Create a duplicated account, a new ID1, the same. Let's see what happened. We can expect when we try to execute the first user request to create a new account with ID1, it should be okay. However, when we try to execute a second request, it should trigger a contract violation for the new feature in the account class as part of the model, for the bank class for part of the model. Let's try to see if that's the case. And then we'll see why it is not ideal for the moment. Okay. What I will do is I'll try to rerun the test case, but now rather than AT01, I'll say AT02. Okay, ooh, this is what we got. Basically, it's more like a stack trace for contract violation, but you can see that here we are violating this non-existing ID precondition that we just defined over here. Let's review that very quickly. You can see that's the non-existing ID precondition that we have just defined. And it's violating it. Somehow we did expect this contract violation to occur. But if you think a little bit more, little bit deeper, this is actually very bad. Think of this. If I am the customer, okay, if I'm the customer, let me illustrate to you again. Let me illustrate to you the picture a little bit more clearly by using the interactive mode. Okay, let me just do exactly what AT02 will do. Let me do interactive mode. So now let me say new ID1. This one is okay. So I did successfully created an account with ID1 with balance 0 initially. So now me as a customer, I say I would like to create ID1. Let's say you go to some automatic bank. So you say I want to create another account for myself with ID1, but I didn't realize I actually give you some duplicated account ID. And what would you expect the automatic bank to return back to you? Would you expect a bank machine to crash, or you would expect the bank machine to give you some meaningful error messages so that you can retry? Well, apparently this is the case where the bank machine simply crashed. If the bank machine simply crashed and telling you this kind of stack trace, for you as a customer, you don't have to know about this stack trace for violation. Only the programmer should worry about it. So that means there's something wrong over here. This contract violation shouldn't be propagated to you or to myself as the customer. So this is not correct. So what does that mean? That means we should really we should somehow amend our command classes over here at the user interface side. The model side is completely okay. The model side does what it is supposed to do. It follows through the design by contract mechanism. You should really define as many preconditions, as many postconditions, and as many invariants as you see fit. You shouldn't really reduce the amount of the contracts you have in the model classes. However, when you try to define your user interface class, for example, ETF new, you should really know about when the user make a request, it might somehow trigger some contract violation in the model side. In that case, the user interface side should really try to report some proper error messages back to the user rather than crashing because of the contract violation. So that's the idea you really want to go through. Okay? As far as the user interface is concerned, they should only call the model feature. For example, the ETF new should only call the new feature in the bank when the ID being supplied by the user does not exist just yet. If the ID already exists, like the second acceptance test we did, then the user interface side should really report an error rather than crashing. Okay, let's see how we can do this. Okay, again, so this is really bad. We want to avoid this. What we should do is we can go back. So now the model size is good. We don't want to change it. Let's go to the abstract UI user commands. Let's go to ETF new over here. Okay, let's see how we can check it. Okay, you know what? Before I do this, I want to show you one more debugging mechanism. Okay, before you can start. Okay, before we do the change. Again, you can see somehow this stack trace over here is just output to you directly on the console. But if you as a programmer, let's say you're doing some acceptance tests also for your projects. So how can you debug this particular error? How can you do it? Let's say you realize, oh, I do have a precondition violated in the new feature, but how can I set the breakpoints and also try to maybe stop there and then debug my feature? Okay, that's a question. When this is printed to you, it's already too late for you to pause at that point using breakpoints. I want to show you exactly how you can do it. Okay, before I modify the command class ETF new. let's go back here. This is something you want to pick up as a debugging mechanism for the batch mode for ETF projects. What I would like to do is go to execution over here, and then go to, okay, I want to go to execution, and then I want to add some execution parameters. So go to execution parameters over here, and then click on add. Okay, and then profile, I can simply call that running batch, okay, running command line batch mode, just give a name. And then arguments over here, so basically it's as if we're going to actually run something like this. Remember, we actually simply say the executable and then -i, that's for the interactive mode. But what we really want to do is something like this. Let me just rerun something here for you. Remember the batch mode that we did over here, that's where we saw the stack trace, but as I said, it's already too late for you to debug. So this is basically the startup project executable, and these are the arguments that we want to pass. Okay, I will simply just go back there, and then let me copy again, -b ato2.txt. However, the path for ato2 is going to be careful, because when you refer to the arguments over here, you're talking about the top level of the projects. What I'm talking about is like this. Remember, this is the folder for your project. This is the top folder for the execution parameter. You want to go inside tests, under acceptance, and under instructor, and then ato2. That's what we're going to do. Okay, let me go there, and then arguments over here. Let me just expand it a little bit further, and then I'll show you. Okay, I will paste. Okay, so now rather than ato2, what I would say is tests, and then acceptance, instructor, and ato2.txt. And then I will simply say run. Okay, apply, and then if I say run, so now when I say run over here, it's going to do exactly what this command line batch mode would do. But now we're going to see the stack trace in the iPhone Studio for debugging purpose. Okay, so now I'm going to say run. And then we should really expect to see exactly the contract violation. So now do not show this again, and break. Okay, so now you can see that's exactly non-existing ID precondition violation. So now we go back to what you're familiar with as a software developer. So now we know that since we actually got a contract violation over here, we can put a breakpoint over here and then try to execute again, so that next time we actually can pause over here. Okay, let's just try it one more time. Okay, so hopefully you will get an idea, and I'll recap. So since we put the breakpoints already, so now I can say run again. So now we're going to pause over here, and then you can see that under accounts, you can see the expressions. I can simply go to accounts. Under accounts, we got basically just one feature over there. Oh, actually, this is the first time we try to call the new. Remember over there in the acceptance test, this is the very first time we call that. Okay, we want to see the second time. So now for the first time, we can see the account is simply just 0. Okay, it's right before we try to execute this one here. Okay, and then we can just say step return. Let me do it again. Maybe not step return. Maybe we should just say step over. That'll be easier for you. Okay, we say run. Okay, we pause over here, and that's where the account will be 0. If I say run again, so now it's going to go to the next time that we call the new, which is the second time we're calling the new. Then this is where the contract violation will be triggered. So now you can see the accounts is actually 1, and what we can do is we can simply copy and paste this this Boolean expression over here, and then we can just paste. Or let me see, maybe I can just type not across accounts as cursor sum cursor.item.id tilde end. Okay, somehow maybe I made some typo over here, but let's just try to see another way. Okay, you can definitely try the expression a little bit by yourself. But now what we can do is under accounts over here, you can see it's a linked list. So let's see over here, you can see that first elements over here is the first accounts that we have got already, and under item is basically of type accounts. And we already got ID1. And ID1 is exactly equal to the ID that we are talking about. So that's how we got the contract violation. Okay. Basically, my point is, once you set up the execution parameters over here, and you can just run exactly how you will run in the command line batch mode. And then this is how you can see the stack trace in the iFlow Studio and set the breakpoints accordingly in order to debug. Okay, so that's something I would like you to pick up. Okay. Okay, let's stop here. Okay, so that's something aside. So just to show you how you can reproduce the contract violation that you saw from the batch mode in the command line in iFlow Studio. Okay, let's now again back to the original story. So this is not good. We don't want to see this for the user, for the customer. So what we want to do is we're going to modify the command class for ETF new and print the error message if the contract violation occurred. What we can do is I'll show you just one solution. You are supposed to come up with a better design for this error message reporting for your projects. Okay, I just want to show you something that will work, which is not necessarily a good design. Okay, so you should really come up with a better design. So now let's go under ETF new. So what we can do is we can say if, basically I can show you one principle over here. You can just go back to the bank class over here. We know that this is the precondition, and we simply just copy that. Okay, and then go back here. We can just copy and paste. We want to say if it is not the case that the precondition actually is satisfied, then we have to give some error message. And over here, you can see not and not. Okay, why don't we just simplify that a little bit? Not and not will just be without a not, double negation. Okay, okay, let's just try to make it a little bit better. So basically, each time, if you want to decide what error condition you want to make, go to the corresponding precondition for the feature and put the negation for that. So since now we talk about error condition rather than precondition, so they are different. Again, precondition means the condition for you to serve, but error condition means the condition for you to report an error. They're completely logical negation of each other. That's why I'm just putting negation over here. So that means over here we're saying if there's any account with the ID that's the same as the ID that we're talking about, then we should actually report an error. Okay, but now if you try to simply do this, okay, it's not going to compile because you can see accounts doesn't exist in the current class over here. So what we should do is we should model the accounts, right, just to make the context right. Okay, if that, we're going to report some error. Otherwise, we're going to say model the new and the ID, like that. Okay, and then I'll say compile. Okay, so now what I will do is I'll just do something that's not very a good design, but you're supposed to come up with something that's better. So what I will do is I'll go to account class. I will just introduce a new attribute over here. Let me call it error. Okay, and then what I will do is for the make over here, because error is reference type, I gotta initialize it. Create error dot make empty. Okay, let's compile first of all. Okay, everything compiles, and now I'm gonna modify. Beg your pardon. So error should be in the bank class, not the account class. Can I just do it again? Okay, let's delete the error over here, and then let me delete the error over here. Okay, I should have done that in the account class, in the bank class. Let's go to bank over here. Let's go to the attributes. What I will do is I'll put error over here, which is of type string, and then over here I would say the constructor. I would say create error dot make empty is a string. Okay, let's compile over here. Everything compiles, and now I would like to go to the out to say if you do have some error, you should print out the error message. Otherwise, you can print out the accounts. Okay, so what I can do is like this. Let's say results to be made empty to begin with, but now I would say if error, which is a string dot is empty, then I will do exactly, that means there's no error. Okay, I can fix the indentation over here. And then I would say otherwise, if you have the error, then you should print out the error message. Let's do that quickly. Okay, otherwise, that means you got the error. So you're gonna say result dot append error. Okay, let's compile. Okay, let's go back here for the ETF new. Okay, so again, let's recap. The error condition is exactly the logical negation of the corresponding precondition. So we want to make sure every time if the error condition or the is satisfied, or if the precondition is violated for the corresponding model feature, in this case, the new feature in the bank class. If it is violated, rather than crashing the whole application, we just want to display some error message to the user, so they can retry with their request. And I can say model dot one more thing to show you. So let's go back to bank. How do we set the error? Okay, and let me just go over here. I can also have maybe set error. Let's say S string and then do error is assigned to S. Okay. Okay. I got some syntax error apparently. So I would say model dot set error. Okay, let me just put it here, but you should really have a more systematic way of doing your error reporting. That should be part of your design. So now I would say ID already exists. Okay, maybe let me make it a little bit better. Okay, there's an ID value already exists. Okay, now let's say S, again, it clashes with the attribute name over here. Why don't we call that message? Okay, let's compile over here. Okay, everything compile. Let's try to rerun. So what used to trigger an error message, what used to trigger a counter violation and crash the system should now be just error message reporting. Okay, if I try that, it's gonna say new over here, and then ID1 already exists, right? Let's make it even better. Okay, so now you can see we're doing regression testing from the customer point of view. So now what I can do is, if there's an error, then we can simply say result.append. Okay, let's make it properly indented with the arrow over here. So now I can say error like that. Compile, and then let's do it again. You can see it's error, and then ID1 already exists. Okay, hopefully you can see that pattern over here. Okay, so again, what we have done so far for this video is, let me recap. In the model classes, you should follow the design by contract principle to define precondition, postcondition, and class invariants for your model classes. However, in the user interface classes, because they are dealing with user requests, so they shouldn't crash when the precondition, for example, is violated in the model side. So what the user command classes should do is they should check if the counter violation might occur. If they might occur, they should really display error messages to the user rather than crashing the system. Okay, and let's say if you do have scenarios like this from your acceptance test, right? Let's say counter violation simply just happened, but you're not too sure how it actually occurred. What you should do is you should really set up the execution parameter as I just did over here, and then try to run the batch mode from your iPhone Studio, so you can set the breakpoints and use the debugger to find out what the faults are. Okay, so that's basically the main learning outcome for this particular video. Okay. So now let's go back here and then make sure everything works. Okay, that's what we got over here. So now we got the error messages display. Okay, and in the next video, we actually show you how you can do more other testing.